Although it feels like Groundhog Day, actually, in many ways. But it's the first day of August, and I am here with Chief Wrong Speaker, Mr. David Darnell. How are you doing tonight?
My people have come to talk about your people and their situations.
Yeah, actually, you can definitely get a hold of a pipe for smoking, by the way, if that's at all possible, part of this ceremony, because we've they're giving them away for free in Multnomah County if you need it. So,
along with tinfoil,
along with tinfoil, straws.
Actually, it's aluminum foil.
Yeah.
August 1st is also Karen Darnell's birthday. Happy birthday, Karen!
Happy birthday, Karen! She's usually in the background there listening to us do these shows. And tonight she's going to be given the wonderful gift of a not too long show, which means we'll launch into it.
Okay.
What's that?
I said, okay. Ready.
So big news.
Ready to wrong speak.
Yep. We, the big news tonight is that prosecutor, special counsel Jack Smith has announced charges against President Trump. He's charging him with what is apparently an unprecedented assault on democracy on January 6th. And I've gotten to watch a lot of coverage of this. I saw Jack Smith give his presentation about the charges. He gave a political speech and talked about how great the Capitol Police were for defending the Capitol, which I don't think they actually got to do that, but because Nancy
Pelosi, they were giving tours, Kevin.
Yeah, I know. But he's been indicted on 4 counts, and when you read through what these counts are, they essentially are accusing him of disagreeing with the outcome of the election and believing that there was fraud. And as one person, as Jesse Waters put it, they are indicting him for fraudulently claiming that there was fraud in the election. That's what they're saying.
Determinative outcome fraud.
Yeah, that's right. Which and for spreading lies, which is not allowed, of course. It's against the law to disagree with Joe Biden or the Democrats. And yeah, this yes, you're back. Yeah, the outcome determinative fraud during the election, and claiming that he won, and apparently it's illegal to claim that you won something. And then discount it, he said, and then they're claiming like some bizarre civil rights violation that he caused people's votes not to be proper, or tried to cause votes to not be properly tallied, blah blah blah. Again, all of this stuff really amounts to a giant we're going to try President Trump for disagreeing with the outcome of the 2020 election and loudly complaining about it in public. There is no assertion here of an incitement to riot or any of the stuff that
no, there's no charges there. That a lawyer friend of mine said on Twitter, he went over and he goes, there's just nothing here.
There's
nothing here. And one of the funny things, well, it's not funny. That news break that comes on the radio when you're listening to a radio show, and I'm listening to the local conservative radio show, and the news break comes on and it says, more or less, it says President Trump has been indicted in his efforts to retain power after he lost an election.
Which is an absurd comment, because he didn't do it. He didn't retain power, and they are not alleging in these indictments that he took any efforts to hold power through some means or force that at his disposal. So it's totally political.
It is.
It has no content to it that belongs in any legal proceeding. And Jonathan Turley went through this and said I was actually expecting something that would have some evidentiary legal import. And for what he can see, this sounds like Trump is being tried in a court of law in order to influence public opinion, not
Right.
because the case has any legitimacy to it
Right.
on its own.
Right. Yeah. It's it's entirely political, and we knew this, and we called it. We'll just go ahead and mention it one more time. We called January 6th what it was shortly after January 6th, and were roundly chided for it by many on our side. But the fact remains, and I think we should say this one thing: if Homeland Security and the FBI wanted a tour of the Capitol so bad, I'm sure they could have arranged it with Nancy Pelosi and the Capitol Police rather than doing it on January 6th, and that resulted in the death of an unarmed protester.
Yeah, and actually, last week there was that report about the other person who was a protester who was also unarmed, who, after experiencing a health problem, like I think it was cardiac arrest,
Yeah.
got kicked in the head and beaten after
Yeah.
she was already basically unconscious.
Right.
And there's video apparently that's showing this happening. And so what we haven't done is, I think all these charges apply, but you have to do a search and replace on President Trump and put in Nancy Pelosi, because I think what they're going to find is actually she did engage in a conspiracy to cause the type of circumstances that existed where people were freely able to enter the Capitol. The precautions were not taken. It's not a matter of incompetence, because we know that she's diabolically incompetent, but diabolically. She was offered by the same person that Jack Smith now thinks he can bring charges against, 10,000 federal troops to go and protect the Capitol, and warned that there was a concern about some disruption that could take place.
Sure.
She took no action. So all these things about conspiracy, disruption, all this stuff, I think I'm going to make my prediction right now. Pendulum's going to swing. Nancy Pelosi, who's probably going to be nothing more at that point than whatever materials survive from plastic surgery, but she will still be brought into a situation where she'll be arraigned and brought up on these charges. That's my prediction, only because I'm going to just believe that what goes around comes around.
Right.
And then of course she'll just become too old and incompetent to stand trial, and probably one of her husband's pink hammer buddies will come in and do her in. But
perhaps, yeah.
By the way, did you know a judge ruled that a Pennsylvania state judge ruled that President Trump is protected by presidential immunity for the statements he made, creating doubt about the 2020 election results while in office? So this is in Pennsylvania, some court case that was kind of making it through the court system at the state level there. And so at the state level, they've asserted a presidential immunity for the statements he made. It's fascinating. That stands in stark contrast to what Jack Smith is doing with creating these charges. And I just think that all of this stuff that they're doing, I learned something. We're going to talk about this here in a minute, but I learned something about the timing of all this. Have you wondered why indictments seem to be brought along rather quickly and expeditiously for President Trump, but when you look at Hunter Biden, who's been under investigation for more than 5 years, do you know he actually has not been indicted yet?
I did not know that.
So apparently you only need to bring forward an indictment when it's a felony. And so all these things that they're doing with Trump, they're all accusing him of felonies, right? All
Right.
felonies. And Hunter Biden was in his plea deal was pleading was making a plea of, would have made a plea of guilty to 2 misdemeanor counts. Misdemeanors do not require that.
I see.
Misdemeanors require just kind of a criminal statement of facts or something.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but this is the thing I learned today. I was listening to Andrew McCarthy explain the mechanics of this. Here's the game they're playing. While they're trying to push these things forward so they can get the court cases in motion, even if they don't expect to come anywhere close to prevailing in these court cases or convicting them of anything, all political. While Hunter Biden, I don't think they're going to bring any indictments whatsoever against him, because the time period that he did the things he did and therefore implicate Joe Biden, 2014 to 2019. This federal statute of limitations on tax crimes is 6 years. The other crimes that he could have charges brought against him for, like the Foreign Agent Registration Act and some of these other issues, 5 years. His Justice Department is going to control the DOJ until January of 2025. So do the math. Almost none of these things they're just running the clock out. And now the thing that stops the clock on the statute of limitations is if you do indict somebody. Then the court case can go on as long as it takes to complete the court case and to reach a verdict. But if you don't actually indict someone, that's how you get around the statute of limitations. So at this point, I'm sorry to say, but Hunter Biden is probably not going to have any charges, felony charges brought against him. And the statute of limitations is going to run out on all this stuff. So really, on both sides of the equation, the Trump stuff that's like what happened today, it's just politics. It has nothing to do with criminality. Nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Yeah, it's banana republic politics.
It is. And Jack Smith said, Washington, D.C., the cradle of our democracy. Well, it's actually...
Shit.
Yeah, it's actually the cradle of our newly established banana republic.
It's a hive of villainy and scum.
That's exactly right. And I just think that on the Biden end of things, what we have to do, what we have to focus on, I do actually think that really the only way forward now is to pursue impeachment with Biden. Not to mention some of the other people in his administration who deservedly have committed crimes, actually, in the conduct of their leadership of these agencies. But Biden, most of all, needs to have, because we're not going to get anything on Hunter Biden. We are getting a lot of finding of fact by these congressional committees. But this is to effectively indict in the court of public opinion Biden and everybody who was involved with covering up for him, for perpetrating these policies that he's been able to get away with by lying and deceiving the American public. So I really believe that the outcome of the stuff that we learned about yesterday, which we'll go into here in a second, is really got to be under an impeachment situation.
Yeah. But Kevin, we won't win in 2024 if we impeach.
Actually, the opposite is true, because the Democrats have a whole plan. And that plan, I think, frankly, doesn't involve Joe Biden continuing to serve as their nominee. In fact, that's actually one of the pieces to lead off with here as we go into the Biden section of our news tonight.
So
Biden,
do you think Newsom or Big Mike?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess we would have to ask the Obama's chef. Maybe he knows.
He's not talking.
He's not talking. And by the way,
Dead chefs don't lie.
no, they don't. But did you see the Babylon Bee thing that from earlier today? Apparently, the Obamas have not received any applications for a new chef yet. Babylon Bee. So I know we got to laugh, or you just end up crying at this stuff. But so here's the thing about Biden, is that he actually stands. His approval rating stands at 39%.
Hey,
which
it's pretty respectable given his performance.
Yes, however, just 45% of Democrat voters said the 80-year-old commander-in-chief should be renominated. So less than half of Democrats actually think he should be the nominee. That is pretty much you're done, because there's no way he can limp through even a mild challenge in the early primaries. And they're going to have to do something. You know why? Because if they don't, then RFK Jr. is actually going to be their nominee, and they will go nuts. They will do whatever they can to get rid of him, because at this point, they got to have a viable other challenger in these primaries to suck up delegates. They can't let them go to RFK Jr. in an upset in, say, New Hampshire, because then they're going to have a real problem at that point.
Right. Yeah. No, you can't have that. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it pans out. So Roger Stone was quoted at the whatever that was, the conference. I think Charlie Kirk, whatever his organization is, I forget, but he was quoted there saying it was going to be Big Mike.
I think they might be setting that up, Big Mike, but I don't think she's up to it, to be honest. But then again, neither was Biden. He campaigned from a basement.
Yeah.
So I guess I didn't get too carried away.
I forget I'm president.
Yeah. Well, he keeps describing Kamala Harris as president. I think he's just trying to terrorize people with that. But so that's Biden has had a bad week, but the Trump stuff has been somehow just perfectly timed to overshadow that news. Have you noticed that?
Oh yeah. The spin going on right now is pretty conspicuous.
Yeah, Devon Archer, who was the business associate who testified yesterday behind closed doors, his testimony, according to the chair Comer of that committee, the oversight committee, shows a real quid pro quo in Ukraine. It was Joe Biden. That in fact, there were these multiple phone calls, 20 of them, where Joe Biden was on the phone with the individuals present who Hunter Biden was getting money from and delivering results for in return, including this the phone call that related to getting this prosecutor fired, the Ukrainian prosecutor, the whole story. I mean, President Trump's completely vindicated now. Had this information been presented during the impeachment trial, not only would the impeachment have been completely negated, but they should have turned around and retroactively impeached Joe Biden at that point.
Yeah.
But they managed to cover it up. And so Joe Biden claiming he didn't know anything about it. The most absurd claim, and this is the guy who is just incorrigible. I actually watched this live while he described it, is a House Democrat who ran as an anti-corruption crusader. He's newly minted Democrat Congressman Dan Golden from New York. He came out and started just explaining in almost, do you remember that character on Saturday Night Live years ago? It was a lawyer, a chain smoking lawyer called Nathan Thurm. And he would get into these conversations and he would say, well, your client, he appears to be, guilty. We just saw a video of him like shooting somebody. He goes, "You didn't see that. You said that. I didn't." And he would just like smoke, and there would be like this ash that would just keep getting longer on the. No, I didn't say it. You said that. There's nothing wrong with my client. You're wrong. You can't say that. I'm going to sue you. And so
Guys are lying to you.
Well, Dan Goldman is a former federal prosecutor, which we now know is actually not exactly such a great thing, given what a former Democrat prosecutor amounts to. But here's what he went on and on and on and saying carefully in the answer to every question. He actually came out in the middle of the testimony to make sure he beat everyone else to the mic yesterday to spin what was going on in the hearing and said, there's no evidence President Biden said, knew anything, had any discussions with these people at all. Right. He was simply on the phone. And then he said, and he repeated over and over that, quote, all they discussed was the weather, unquote. Yeah. That's
Come on, man.
Come on, man. How's the weather over there?
Nobody F's with a Biden.
Yeah, I just think that at this point, it's becoming bad actually for Biden, because Devon Archer has essentially corroborated all the things that we suspected, and including the idea that Hunter Biden warned Devon Archer that they might be guilty of FARA violations right before he took the seat on the Burisma board. So every piece of evidence that comes forward is actually literally putting another nail in the coffin of not only Hunter Biden, but the assertion that Joe Biden didn't know anything and wasn't involved with Hunter Biden's business. And I think it's only a matter of time before, when this comes out in front of a impeachment hearing, Democrats will squeal and scream, but they won't be able to deny that the evidence is all lined up. In fact, Devon Archer told Congress that Burisma pressured Hunter Biden to get rid of the Ukrainian prosecutor. And then Joe Biden later bragged that he did exactly that. So how long is this guy going to last? I don't know. But what's his name? Peter Doocy of Fox News got in front of Joe Biden yesterday and started asking him about the revelations from the hearings. And Joe Biden just issued a blanket denial again, saying, I know I had nothing to do with it. It's all lies. And you should be looking at Trump. Trump's the one who's doing this to the, and he's the corrupt one. And then he walked away in a huff. I don't even think Joe Biden is good at issuing denials anymore.
No, he's not good at anything. I don't know how he made it for 50. Well, I know how he made it for 50 years in the Senate, because he's probably willing to do anything to remain in power. But I hope that the slim Republican majority in the House will bring articles of impeachment against him, so that we can find out what's going on with this corrupt organization that he calls the Biden family. But I'm not holding my breath, Kevin.
No, well, they're going to drag it out. So you mustn't hold your breath. I do think that eventually it'll move forward. I'm more concerned about timing, because now that we know this is all about politics, that Joe Biden's not going to be removed from office in the Senate. That's not happening. Democrats will stick together and it won't happen. But we can force the news cycle to validate the reality that he is, in fact, totally corrupt, and that he has lied, and he lied in order to get elected. All that can be now validated. So we need to put that out in front of the American people. And if people are afraid that we're going to lose an election because we actually do that, then they don't understand how elections work. You actually influence the electorate to see things your way.
Yeah.
And then that defines the election.
Yeah.
And then that actually becomes an issue in the election. And one piece of evidence of that is that Ron DeSantis just came out today, and he says he backs a Biden impeachment inquiry. They should pursue that. The corruption is just incredible with what's happening there. it's becoming clear that all the people that are running for the nomination besides President Trump, who are way behind him in the polls, they're all going to have to line up on one side of this as to what the nature is of these fake criminal charges. If they think they're going to escape fake criminal charges in the future, they're dreaming, because this is the plan they have for anybody who stands up to them.
Right.
But I think the question is, and I wanted to ask you this, because there's a debate about whether President Trump should bother to go to the Fox News hosted RNC debate in August. And Dana Perino today tried to make the case that after these indictments and stuff, actually that's a good reason for Trump to go to the debate and face down anybody who is there and say, do any of you think that there's anything to these indictments? Are you going to go with that or not? Anybody who says yes or anything other than no, a vehement no,
Right,
is gone. Destroys those people by asking that question. So
right.
that's a good point. But then I also thought, well, if they're doing their job at hosting the debate where if Trump's not there, aren't they going to ask all of the candidates that same question anyway?
They should, yeah. They should. Yeah, my particular take on it is if you're overwhelmingly leading in polling and it doesn't look like you're slipping or will ever slip and you're almost guaranteed the nomination, then why open yourself up in a debate?
Yeah. Well, essentially you're giving stature to anybody who comes in and tries to slay you.
You're giving viewership to Fox,
and you're giving attention to anybody who can figure out some clever phrase to sting you with,
which they will.
that the media will gladly repeat over and over and over, right? So why even help them? Why even help those people be noticed? That's a bedrock principle in politics. You just don't give attention to your unknown opponents. No,
don't give them any oxygen. And so, I mean, if I was his advisor, unless something changed before that election, I would say, nah, skip it.
I think that's actually the growing consensus, which has some people furious, but I don't really care, because I think if you're asking what somebody should honestly do from their perspective, then that's the most sensible thing. I'd love to see a debate. I'd love to see, it'd be fun, right?
Yeah, everybody liked Trump in the debates, but again, you're opening yourself up. Why risk an overwhelming lead in a primary race when you don't necessarily have to? That's
and he's racking up more and more endorsements too. By the way, a bunch of Ohio Republican lawmakers endorsed Trump just today.
That's
so
good.
I think it's becoming more clear exactly what direction this is all heading.
Yeah, I mean it's where are we? We're 15 months, 16 months out.
Yeah.
And no one's made a dent in polling. It's over. Yeah,
the closest second place candidate has already had to reorganize his campaign, fire a third of his staff, and refocus his energies and resources. So,
right.
Probably not going in a good direction, really. Well, speaking of not going in a good direction, while we're all focused on all the politics and all these court cases and investigations, meanwhile, the energy industry, specifically the president of the U.S. Oil and Gas Association, warned that he believes that Biden is planning to and will declare a climate emergency for the purpose of seizing powers, just like the COVID pandemic, where they could.
Who said it first? People, where did you hear that first?
That's right here on
Years
Capital
ago.
Audience. We said it in 2020 when we could see the writing on the wall, but now I think it's being validated because the head of the U.S. Oil and Gas Association, not exactly, a zero hedge conspiracy theorist. He's just somebody who actually goes with what he's hearing on behalf of the industry that he represents. And he's saying that it would give the president vast unchecked authority to shut down everything from communications to infrastructure. Infrastructure would include water and electricity. He could freeze assets as well under such a declaration. Similar to the COVID emergency of 2020, they could shutter businesses. They could order businesses to close. Some of the things they think they actually will do if such because they're constantly talking about the climate crisis, constantly.
Oh
right?
God, it's an unbelievable onslaught. I actually did a collage of the little news boxes on Google over a 3-day period, and it's just incredible. Every news outlet has some wild climate change claim, but
yeah,
claim.
yeah, it's apparently the hottest July since the Earth formed from molten lava.
Ever.
Yeah. And of course they just know that it's caused by women driving SUVs in the suburbs. So super smart scientists.
Especially Range Rovers. Range Rovers are particularly bad, man.
Range Rovers. Oh, and also 2-cycle leaf blowers, which I'm not a fan of, but those
either.
But now we can get them banned.
Just because I have such a hard time keeping mine running, that's the only thing that pisses me off about those things.
Well, so here's what they say. They're saying here's a non-exhaustive legal guide issued by the Center for Biological Diversity of what an emergency declaration could consist of. Ending crude oil exports. End all offshore oil and gas leasing. Restrict U.S. fossil fuel exports and end hundreds of billions of dollars in overseas fossil fuel investments. Dramatically accelerate a transition to clean energy. Simply by going and ordering it. And they said that short of an emergency declaration, a Los Angeles Times staff writer recently wrote a story that asked whether Americans should be subjected to, quote, occasional, unquote, power grid blackouts, which is they're very used to in California.
Right.
So
by clean energy, they do mean little or no energy. That's what they mean.
That's right. And since energy equals civilization, they also mean little or no civilization because riots, looting, all this stuff that they actually think is just a peaceful protest, apparently, would happen. And here's what this guy said in the Los Angeles Times. He goes, what's more important, keeping the lights on 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, or solving the climate crisis? By the way, I haven't heard any of them promise to actually solve it. They just plan to do whatever is necessary, but then they never actually are accountable for producing any quantifiable change in the Earth's climate.
No,
because they can't.
No, they can't. No, they can't. They never could. And the other thing about this is states like Oregon, probably California and Washington too, they'll jump on this thing the same way they jumped on COVID. And as we talked about on this show 3 years ago, Oregon already has ORS 179, which gives the governor dictatorial powers over everything in the event of an energy emergency. And we all know energy emergency could mean anything that the governor wants it to mean. And she can shut down gas stations. She can shut down businesses, everything they did in COVID. And will they do it? Well, you're damn right they will do it because they know 70 or 80% of the people will comply.
Yeah, that's what they were. They were testing compliance way back when. And, it's fascinating because a little flashback, back in 2020, in a part of the World Economic Forum's event that year, kind of buried in all of the, video that was taken, something has surfaced showing Nicole Schwab. Yes, the daughter of Klaus Schwab, the guy who seems to be a Bond villain out of Central Casting.
He's a visionary, Kevin. He's a visionary.
He's a visionary. Yeah. Hitler, Mao, visionaries. So
yes, exactly.
She said that we should be prepared for global climate lockdowns. and said it would be a tremendous opportunity to test how the public would comply with measures that strip them of their rights and freedoms.
Yeah.
They would simply declare a climate emergency and create a change that is not incremental to position nature at the core of the economy. So this is what they want to do. They believe this crap, and they've been talking about it for 3 years, and now I think it's getting very close to being real. And by the way, if you've got all this stuff going on, your son, all these investigations, impeachment, if you want to distract everybody from that, do some climate lockdowns. And you know what? If he's not running for re-election, I think there's an even better chance that he'll do it.
Well, just think what a great asset it would be to have climate lockdowns during the election. You know,
Yeah.
You can't go to a polling place. You're going to have to use a mail-in ballot. It's the only. I mean, we want to save our democracy here, so we will get you a ballot, but you know how that goes. But yeah, it's ridiculous. You know, it's the phrase "there is no tyrant if no one obeys," or "there is no tyranny if no one obeys." And we saw in this dry run with COVID, far too many Americans willing to trade your liberty, my liberty, for their safety.
Yeah.
And that was probably the single largest shocking and overwhelmingly unbelievable thing for me that came out of the COVID lockdowns. I didn't think there were that many people that would go along with that crap.
Well, and I actually believe that they might have worn out some of that compliance during COVID. That's my gut feeling, because even though there were a lot of people that complied,
Hope so.
I also think that by the end of the lockdowns and the mask requirements, people kind of like, I'm not doing that again. Now,
I sure hope so, Kevin, because
Yeah.
that's ridiculous. Yeah. I mean, I can't stress non-compliance with this kind of crap enough. I mean, because compliance is, in fact, what they're looking for, and compliance is the only thing that makes it work.
Yeah, because they actually don't have enough power to force everybody to do something.
No.
That's why they had to back down on some of the lockdowns and the mandates during COVID. Is that like, you know what, telling everybody to do this, not working. So let's pretend like we're listening to them by stopping to tell them that they have to do it.
Yeah.
And then try to get reelected.
We'll try again later.
Yeah, we'll just see if we can get more power and try it again later, which is why I think they don't mind destroying the entire justice system in order to try and shape the presidential election outcome. Well, so I just posted the video on Rumble, so people can go watch that, of that woman, Klaus Schwab's daughter, so you can see for yourself what she says. But there's another thing I think it's important to bring to people's attention. While we're focused on all the bread and circuses of these court cases, they are plotting their climate emergency. And China apparently has infected American infrastructure with malware that would disrupt all of our civilian infrastructure, power, water, and they're finding it everywhere.
Wow.
They're not finding it in the protected secret systems in the Pentagon and so on, but they are finding it all over the place in private industry, and they're trying to figure out how to detect it everywhere where it is and purge it, because it's like they describe it as a ticking time bomb. So while we're all distracted with this other stuff, China's already they're way ahead of us. China's not distracted. Have you noticed that? They're not distracted.
No, they're very intentional and methodical.
And this is why we need to stay focused on what's happening. Now, back here in Oregon, we had a development yesterday. The former the Oregon Liquor and Cannabis Control Commission, or something like OLCC?
Oregon Liquor and Cannabis Commission, I think is what they call it.
Yeah. So this guy, Steve Marks, he was fired by Tina Kotek, and there was a whole thing with the whiskey and all that stuff that was going on. And
Cappies, baby, yeah.
Yep. He had been in charge for 10 years, I think, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he has filed a tort claim notice, which is usually something you do before you're going to file a lawsuit, alleging that Tina Kotek fired him at the behest of Rosa Caceres of LaModa. who, as we know, was one of the largest donors, actually single donors to Tina Kotek's campaign, and the reason why Shemia Fagan is now the disgraced ex Secretary of State under federal investigation.
Right.
So I'm really curious, because if this does get to a point where people have to go to a court of law and start giving sworn depositions, because this isn't a criminal case. Kotek can't say, I hereby, plead the Fifth Amendment. She will have to respond to
Sure.
an action, right? I'm curious if what this will expose, because I mean, Tina Kotek, she was really slow to act on this. Like, she just wanted this problem to go away, and then she pretended like it didn't even happen. And then we heard about the bags of cash and saw how much of it she had received.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. I'm looking forward to the investigation into this too. I think we all know, and I think we talked about it, that this corruption, this payoff, goes a lot deeper than just Fagan. We know Hoyle got bags of money. We know, I'm not sure if literally, but Hoyle got bags of money, and Kotek got bags of money, and she was pretty friendly with Mitchell, Aaron Mitchell, Rose's accomplice. And personally, I think the OLCC needs to be disbanded. I think it's a Prohibition era dinosaur that has absolutely no value whatsoever. At least those are my opinions on the OLCC, because I have to deal with them every single freaking day. And they're very ineffective. And if we can't get rid of them, like they did in Washington, they got rid of their Liquor Control Commission, or whatever they called it up there. Then we certainly need some better leadership in there. But yeah, I think we all kind of want to know how deep was Kotek in Lamota's pockets.
Yeah, and what did she do? What did she deliver on their behalf for that? Because we know that's how the system really works in Salem, and if that's the case, a court depositions could actually bring forward some very uncomfortable information.
They could.
But as I said yesterday, talking with Representative Helfrich, I thanked him for getting the impeachment ballot item on the ballot for 2024, so that we can add that to Oregon's constitution and be able to take action if necessary. But then we have to elect a Secretary of State that is the antithesis of Tina Kotek and the Democrats. So
we do.
Oregon
Julie
House.
Parrish.
What's that?
Julie Parrish.
So Oregon House Republicans have sent a formal letter requesting a review of commutations done by Kate Brown that were conditional commutations, like the one that the gentleman who was released in 2021 then got out and killed 4 women, and then finally, after completing the last murder, was finally taken back into custody, and his commutation was revoked. Even though he, in November of 2022, the last woman who was killed had filed a complaint of assault against that same guy, and the guy should have immediately deemed in violation of his parole and returned, or his conditions of his commutation, returned to prison. So they're urging Kotek, who did not do the commutations, Kate Brown did, but has the power to review and revoke those commutations, to take action now before someone else gets murdered. And they said already that that somewhere around 20% of the people that have sentences commuted then subsequently get arrested for a felony. That's across the country. They say that happens to commutations. We did mass commutations, so we have a massive problem. But they're urging her to do that. I think this is actually a good move, because if she doesn't do it, and they're rolling tape on a TV news station about someone that's been killed by a person who has had their sentence commuted, then that's literally blood on Kotek's hands.
Right. Yeah, it is a good move. And let's hope that Kotek takes it under advisement and does something about it before somebody else gets hurt, If I was advising her, I would say, hey, it might be a real good way to shift focus from this Steve Marks tort claim.
Yes, that's exactly
I mean,
it.
it's all politics, I mean,
It's all politics, and it's all media and public attention, and what can you get away with, and
yeah, none of them do anything for the right motivation or for the right reasons, but you can do something for a bad motivation that has a positive outcome. So,
well, one last story, and then we'll wrap up so you can get to celebrating your wife's birthday.
yeah,
Is there's some good news. We wanted to end on some good news.
good. I like good news.
The Salem payroll tax that was passed by the city council is being referred. It looks like it's got a really good chance of being referred to the voters to give a yes or no on. And it needed, I think it was 3,000. Needed 3,000, just shy of 4,000 signatures actually, and they've just submitted 10,000. And these 10,000 should be more than enough to get it on the ballot. And that's really good news because it would have imposed a city income tax on people, both anybody who works in Salem. So a bunch of people who can't even vote to reject it.
Right.
A significant amount of taxation on them if you make the average
representation.
That representation, yeah, which has a bad history. But if you make the average $62,000, which is the in Salem, that's I guess the average income, you pay $500 right off the top in this tax. And if you make more, you have even more. And
wow.
And this is because they say they're going to focus on funding police, fire, and
homeless. What about the homeless? Oh, okay.
Yeah, because they already don't. Because there's already like billions of dollars sloshing around in the states that's supposedly going to solve homelessness. And by the way, last time I checked, police and fire, isn't that what they should be using the general fund for? Isn't that kind of like the thing that the government's supposed to spend the taxes on? Why?
Yeah.
It's one of these games again where they pass a tax and say it's going to fund something that people really want because they're taking the money they already have and spending it on stuff people don't want.
Like PERS.
Yeah, that's right. So, good news. Stay tuned. It's worth fighting. It's worth actually pushing back on these things. And it's worth letting people know what's going on and what the real story is because, as you said, it's all politics. People have to know how to decode all this stuff and make the right decisions when it comes time.
Yeah. Yeah, just follow the money.
Well, there we go, folks. That was our blockbuster evening. Again, happy birthday to Karen Darnell. And we should be back tomorrow with another episode of The Captive Audience. And we wish everybody a good evening. We'll see you then.